Guys, I'm about to show you some amazing things. We are measuring the temple. Guys, in Revelation 11, it says, measure the temple, measure the altar, measure the inner court. And then also it talks about the outer court. If you are unfamiliar with the 144 cubit square wall in the Cornerstone, I have links in the video description field. Please watch those videos. What I'm sharing with you is a series of messages, okay? And I can't repeat messages that I've already recorded, so I encourage you to watch those other videos. I'm going to put the links right in the description field. Please click on those, please get those, and please get these notes. Now, John is instructed to measure the temple. That's in Revelation 11. Revelation 11, he's given a rod, he's given a reed. Reed in Greek is kalamos. It's actually what the word says. But he's given a reed like a rod. Now, if you study the reed or you study the measuring rod, you'll see that there's more than one. The one in Revelation 11 is a walking stick. It's small. But in order for us to learn how to measure the temple, to measure New Jerusalem, we must know Ezekiel's temple. Ezekiel's temple will be built. Yeshua will reign in Ezekiel's temple in the 1,000 years. And it is a precursor to New Jerusalem. I don't have time in this video to go through it, but all the symbolisms are there. The tree of life, the river of life flowing from the temple, all the measure. It's just smaller. New Jerusalem is much larger, okay? But it's smaller. But it gives us information which show us how to measure New Jerusalem, okay? So again, I do encourage you to watch the previous video because there is more than one wall. There's an inner court, okay? We're going to look at the inner court as compared to Ezekiel. And there is an outer wall, okay? But it's important for us to understand that this is God's plan all along, okay? All along, it is the bride. John sees a new heaven, a new earth, and a bride coming down adorned for her husband, okay? So the structure we are studying is people. It's very important that we understand that. We are studying people. The numbers and the measurements are not found by pagan Roman measurements. They're found in the Scriptures. The Scriptures will speak to the Scriptures. So, in order for us to measure, we must know the Scriptures. And we must know that there is more than one rod. There's another one in Ezekiel's description of the angel, which is 6 cubits. Okay? 6 cubits is 12.6 feet long. So I don't have the room here to show you that, but that's obviously a different measurement than this one. That measurement is very critical for us to understand, as is Ezekiel's wall. Here we have for you these handouts, which again I encourage you to get. Much of what I'm saying, I'm going to go over these documents. Now, God tells Ezekiel something that is clear, that as we enter this time of Yeshua's coming, he speaks very strongly about this sanctuary. In this sanctuary, it's Ezekiel's chapters 40 through, I think, 47. And they directly relate to New Jerusalem in many ways. One of which I want to read to you because this is the reason why the Lord gave us this instruction. And he said unto me, Son of man, the place of my throne, the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel forever, in my holy name, shall the house of Israel no more defile, neither they and their kings by their whoredoms, or their carcasses of their kings in their high places. No more. Verse 9. Let them put away their whoredoms and their carcasses of their kings, and I will dwell in the midst of them. That's Ezekiel 43, Ezekiel 44. And say unto the rebellious, even unto the house of Israel, Thus says the Lord God, O house of Israel, let it suffice you in all your abominations, that you have brought into my sanctuary strangers, uncircumcised of heart, uncircumcised of flesh, to be in my sanctuary, to pollute it, even my house. When you offer my bread and the fat and the blood, and you have broken my covenant because of your abominations, and you have not kept the charge of my holy things, but you have set keepers of my charge in my sanctuary for yourselves. Thus says the Lord God, no stranger, circumcised of heart, no uncircumcised of flesh, shall enter into my sanctuary of any stranger that is among the children of Israel. Guys, the children of Israel is the bride. There are 12 gates. At those 12 gates, the names of the 12 tribes. God's plan all along. The early patriarchs were looking for a city whose builder and maker was God, and the foundation. You read that in Hebrews 11. So, New Jerusalem is the plan all along. So we must study, we must understand. Now, I'm going to bring the camera over here, and I'm going to do a quick recap on the previous video, because you'll see the pattern and structure of these numbers. Fascinating. So let's get right into it, guys. Okay, guys, now as a quick recap, this is the 144 cubit square wall. Please watch this other video on this. We go into much greater detail. Essentially, there's two walls. There's an inner wall and an outer wall. Now, we're going to compare Ezekiel, but this is New Jerusalem, and there is an inner wall. It's 144 cubits. When you make a perfect square, 144 cubits, you find some fascinating things. We've determined that the number of inches in a sacred cubit is 25 inches, and there's 3,600 inches in one wall, and there's 4 walls. So we're going to find some amazing things with these numbers. I hope you can see these numbers and understand their relationship one to another. Okay. Now, 3,600 relates to 360. Just like there's a prophetic day, 360 days. Okay, and you can see that times 4 is 14,400. We know that relates to the 144,000, and we also convert those into feet, and we see that there's 1,200. We know that's one of the numbers of the man-child, the keepers of the vineyard, other videos on that. Now, when we convert those feet to meters, we find something fascinating. There are 91 meters in one wall, and that now tells us instruction on Enoch's calendar. That's why I do Enoch's calendar, because we must use that to measure these 360 days. And you have to add, 4 days, which is 364. Now, other numbers here to point out, again, the gates. So there are gates. Each gate is 100 feet, So we have cubits, 144 cubits, converted to feet. We have 100 feet. And when we convert those to meters, we have 30, 30, and 31, adding to 91. Okay? Again, there's 14,400 inches representing the 144,000. Now, I wanted to show you that briefly. Also, before I get into New Jerusalem, we also measured the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies is a perfect square, which is 20 cubits. Okay? And we're going to see how also Ezekiel and New Jerusalem relate to the Holy of Holies, 20 cubits. Right? Now, let's begin our study on this pattern. Okay, get this in the screen for you to see. Here it is. Measure the altar, the inner court, the outer court, which relates to a furlong in this case. Okay, I'm going to make this available to you, and you can get this. But what we're going to do here, guys, is something fascinating. In this information I'm showing you right here, this side relates to Ezekiel. This side relates to New Jerusalem. Okay? Now, what I want to explain to you, for you to understand, I've showed you those numbers. Now, I also want to explain to you God's order in his pattern of fractals. What a fractal is, guys, a fractal is a one piece of information that is reproduced over another piece of information. For example, all of creation is fractals. So if you were to take a leaf and you were to put the leaf in the sun, you would see a stem, you would see branches that look just like a tree. But it's not a tree, it's a leaf. It's a fractal, okay? Now, when he instructs us to measure the altar, you can see that the altar is a fractal to the inner court, okay? So what I've drawn here is this is, in Ezekiel, this is the altar. In the altar, there are 4 horns, okay? And those are highlighted in yellow. You'll see that in Ezekiel's wall, there are corners, okay? And the thickness of the wall is 5 cubits, okay? So this structure here is reproduced here. You can see it's a perfect square. So you can see that? See that right here? That's a fractal. That's a small version of something that is larger. So that's what the Ezekiel temple gives us. Gives us information that's small that later we can use to measure New Jerusalem, okay? So when we were drawing this, and we had this 140 cubit square wall, you can see this is the size of it, okay? Now, here, that is this size. It's the thickness of the wall. So there are 2 walls, guys. There's 2 walls in New Jerusalem. There are 2 walls in Ezekiel's temple. There's an inner wall and an outer wall. Now, Ezekiel's temple, walls, the inner wall. Hopefully you can see this. This is in Ezekiel 41, verses 12 through 13, and it tells us it's 5 cubits thick. The thickness of the 5 cubits relates to the story of the virgins. There are 5 wise virgins, okay? So that's why it's 5. That's why in New Jerusalem, the thickness of the wall is 144 cubits, relating to the 144,000. Also the wise virgins. See, all these patterns and numbers, guys, are to show you clearly that these things, we're going to keep going, okay? So the inside of Ezekiel's wall, this one here, is 90 cubits, okay? The inside wall. The outside wall is 100 cubits. So here we have that drawn. You see 90 cubits. That's the inside portion. And then you're essentially subtracting 5, and 5 is 10 from 90 is 100. And so the outside wall is 100. What's the significance, Leland? Well, the significance is this is a season. Remember over here it was 91? 91 is meters. But here in cubits, it's 90. Well, what does that mean? It means that 90 relates to a season or 3 months. So if that's just that portion of the year, you multiply it by 4, 90 times 4, 360. So now we have prophetic days. So the inner wall of Ezekiel is 360 days. Marked right here, 90 times 4. You see that? Where here, it was 365 meters. Amazing. So that's why these things, guys, are right. These are the correct measurements, okay? So those are the cubits in Ezekiel's wall. Then Ezekiel also has an external wall. And he measured the external wall with a reed or reeds. Okay? Now, it tells us clearly that a reed is 6 cubits. So remember, I was showing you my staff. It's a walking stick. It's short. But 6 cubits is 12 feet, 12.6 feet, whatever fraction of inches that is. So now we must use this reed to measure the outside wall. So the outside wall, the reed is 6 cubits, and there's 25.2 inches in a cubit. So that is 151.2. If you need this, just print this off, and you might even want to print this off before the video so you can have this if it's not clear, if you can't quite see it. Okay, so 151.2. Now those are inches. So we're trying to determine the number of feet, because that's 151.2 is the number of inches divided by 12 to determine the number of feet. And we have 12.6 feet. Now you can see here I put 12.60. Why? Because again, that relates to 1,260 days. See these numbers, guys? I'm going to keep repeating these numbers so you get it. Now we have 12.6 feet in one reed. It tells us clearly that on the outside wall of Ezekiel's temple, it's 500 reeds. That's 12.6 times 500 is 6,300 feet in one wall. Okay? So now we have this information, which is critical. Why? Because when we translate this over to New Jerusalem, we need these same measurements. You don't go and look at the Romans, guys, to try and determine a furlong or these measurements. You have to look at the scriptures. Ezekiel's temple gives us these measurements. Now, fascinating things happen. So we have one wall, which is 6,300 feet. Multiplied by 4, we have 25,200. Again, bringing us all the way back to the perfect measurement of a cubit, 25.2. We showed you also the 90 cubits on the inside wall of the inner court, okay, 360 days. And when we add up these cornerstones, these are cornerstones, okay, 5 cubits. That's why we have them highlighted, because they relate to the altar. We have 5, and there's 4 of them, which is 20 cubits, thus relating perfectly to the measurement of the Holy of Holies, which is a perfect square of 20 cubits. Okay, so I'm showing you all these patterns and structures because it is perfectly aligned. Now, in this information here, we have New Jerusalem. Before I get to New Jerusalem, I want to show you the altar as well. Now, it says measure the altar in Revelation 11. Now, there's no actual measurements of the altar, because eventually there's no temple in New Jerusalem. God himself is the temple, okay? But it says measure the altar in Revelation 11. So we must go by Ezekiel's measurement of the altar. And here it is. Now what this altar is the inside measurement of the altar is 12 cubits, okay? Then there's a wall, and that's a cubit. And then there's another portion, which is a first base, or it's called a lower settle. If you read, this is in Ezekiel 43, I believe. And then there's another wall, which is another cubit. And there you see it. It is another outside portion. So we have the inside portion is 12. This is 13, 14, 15. Now what this is the measure of the altar. Why? Because this is actually giving us instruction on the book of Revelation. Revelation 12. Revelation 13, Revelation 14, Revelation 15. Well, Revelation 12, you have 12 cubits. What's 12 cubits? Well, you have the woman clothed with the sun and 12 stars in her crown, right? 13 relates to the beast. That's the thickness of the wall. Revelation 13. Revelation 14, the 144,000. Well, that relates to the 14 cubits. That's the thickness of the wall by 2. Okay, and Revelation 15, that's the base of the wall. Well, what is that? That is those that got victory over the beast. What is this? The seal. The 5th seal is the souls that cry out from under the altar. That's why we're measuring the altar. It says, measure the altar and those that worship therein. Well, who worships? The souls that are crying out for the altar. That's in Revelation 6, 5th seal. Measure them. We can measure them. In Solomon's temple, he got 666 talents of gold to build a temple. That's 666 times 10,380 times 2 is 13,826,160 martyrs. That's how many people are going to be martyred. It's a figure. I'll put a link in the description for you. We already talked about this. But it's all found in the measurement of the altar. And here you have also represented the 4 horns. The 4 horns are the 4 spirits of the heavens. Again, other videos on this, if these things I'm saying are new to you. But it tells us clearly, measure the altar. Well, how do you do that? You go to Ezekiel to find these measurements. All right, now, we did all that because we must tell you how to measure New Jerusalem. When we get to New Jerusalem, Revelation 21:15, he sees an angel with a golden reed, and he goes to measure the city. Okay, now we learned a reed is 12.6 feet. 12.6 feet. All right, now, what is a furlong? What is a furlong, guys? A furlong in Greek is a stadion, just like we use the word stadium. Okay, so this relates to a race. In fact, in 1 Corinthians 9, verse 24, we all run a race, okay? But only one receives a prize. Okay, so run your race. In Hebrews it says, casting aside sins and every weight that besets us, seeing that we are encompassed by a great stadium of witnesses that are watching us.
Okay? So let us run our race with patience. Hebrews 12. Guys, the stadium, a furlong, relates to people. It relates to the people that will finish the race. Well, how many are they? Well, there's 12,000 furlongs. Okay? There's 12,000 furlongs, guys. New Jerusalem is a perfect square. There's 12,000 furlongs in its length, breadth, depth, and height. That means a perfect square has 12 sides to it. So what are you saying, Leland? Those 12 sides relate to the 12 tribes. And Revelation says there's 12 tribes of the children of Israel, and there's 12,000 furlongs. So what you have is you clearly have, where did I put it on here somewhere? A perfect square, 12 sides times 12,000 furlongs is 144,000 furlongs. That's New Jerusalem. If you don't know that the 144,000 are not Jews, I don't know what to tell you. I'm doing all this to show you clearly they are New Jerusalem, guys. New Jerusalem. This is the first fruits, okay? Now, let's continue measuring, okay? So, a furlong, those are those that finish the race. Amazing, okay? Now, there are 12,000 of those that finish a race, and we see that in Revelation 7. The 12 tribes are listed, so each of those tribes relates to a side of New Jerusalem, okay? Now, the outer wall, we learned, now we're going to determine what is the measurement of a furlong. Well, we had to go to Ezekiel because he had 500 reeds. Those 500 reeds, or 6,300 feet, that's a furlong, guys. It's right in Ezekiel. Ezekiel's outer wall is a furlong. It's one furlong, all right? Now, once we start measuring, we got to go beyond feet, okay? So now what we have to do is there are 5,208 feet in 1 mile. So we got to get into miles now. That's how big New Jerusalem is, all right? So 1 mile is 5,208 feet. So we divide that by 6,300. So that means that each furlong is 1.2 miles. You see that? So we got that from 500 reeds, which is 6,300 feet, divided by the number of feet in a mile determines that we have 1.2 miles and 1 furlong. And we know that there are 12,000 furlongs. That makes one wall of New Jerusalem 14,400 miles. That's right. I don't care what you look up and you say how many the length of a furlong. It's not. It's 1.2 miles, guys. It's 1.2 miles. And when we do that, we have, again, perfect figures. Remember I showed you over here? Look at this. There were 14,400 inches in the 144 cubit square wall. Now, we have 14,400 miles. This is New Jerusalem. It's larger than the earth, guys. Now, remember, John saw a new heavens and a new earth. Now, I know we probably think that, New Jerusalem is this square and it's like this big and it lands on the earth. No, it's not. It's like a planet itself. It's bigger than the earth. The earth is 8,000 miles. This is drawn to scale. So here's 14,400 miles. That's just one wall. The earth will fit inside this, guys. I don't know what to tell you, but that's how big this is. That's how big New Jerusalem is. I know you may envision in your mind something that, is this box and it comes down and lands on the earth, but this is a new heavens and a new earth, guys. This is not, it's just, what I'm trying to tell you is that the measurements in Ezekiel give us the perfect measurement of New Jerusalem, okay? And it's big. Now, in order for me to confirm this to you, I have notes of it here so you can have it, but we talk about in Habakkuk 3. It actually gives us information. I'm going to read more of the verses that I have here. I don't have the space to write this whole thing, but I'm going to read it to you. God came out of Teman and the Holy One from Mount Paran. And so God is coming out, and he's coming. His glory covered the heavens. Here's the heavens. And the earth was full of his praise. This is the earth. His brightness was the light. He had horns coming out of his hand. So he had a hand and he's got horns. What were the horns? The altar. What I'm getting at is the earth is the altar, guys. The earth is the altar. It's the center. It is in the. If you look at Ezekiel's temple, you'll see the altar is in the perfect center of the perfect square of the complex. Okay, but it's the earth. The earth is perfectly around that altar. And before him went pestilence, and burning coals went forth from his feet. Right here are the burning coals. These are at his feet. The altar is at his feet. This is Habakkuk 3, guys. It's giving us this amazing, amazing information. So the burning coals at his feet are the altar. He stood and measured the earth. So what is this saying? The measurement of the earth is based on a relationship of the altar and New Jerusalem, or this inner wall. Amazing, 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 amazing. Guys, all the information I'm showing you is perfect design. God instructs us to measure. If the measurement is people. If you think the 144,000 are Jews, you are greatly mistaken. The Jews are a type and shadow of New Jerusalem. New Jerusalem is coming down. And these people are on the earth being prepared. They are the first fruits unto God and the Lamb. If you don't know what I'm saying, I don't know how to explain to you anymore. Perfect measurements. The 14,400 miles of New Jerusalem. Those that win the race, 12,000. 144,000 furlongs. Why? Because it's a perfect square. There's 12 sides. So those 12 sides are the 12 tribes, and there's 12,000 each. It's exactly what we see in Revelation chapter 7. So guys, to God be the glory for all this information. I'll make these documents available for you so that you can go over this. If I've went over this quickly, or you're unfamiliar with some of the other messages, please watch the other messages. He's coming. He's coming for a remnant. These are the ones that will be gathered in the clouds. It's not going to be a great multitude. That's coming later. Okay. To Yeshua be all the praise, honor, and glory. And I pray that you watch and you be counted worthy to escape all these things. In Yeshua's name, amen.